humanity's oldest foe. In the 19th century, medicine was mired in the Dark Ages. Until beer rode to the rescue.
Beer and science go hand in hand.
Beer led medical science to a discovery so important that it established how we think about disease to this very day.
So much of the fundamental science that we do today, as it applies to health, disease, and so on, came out of the brewing industry. Beer was the basis of modern medicine.
It all started in the 1850s with scientist Louis Pasteur. He invented pasteurization. Tragically, people always link him to this. But he was actually studying this.
Some people think he was looking at milk, but in fact he was actually looking at beer. And beer was the first beverage, actually, to be pasteurized.
Pasteur started by trying to answer a vexing question. Why does beer sometimes spoil? Then he made a startling discovery. Beer is alive. Along with large round yeast cells, he spotted something smaller and more sinister.
He would have seen smaller bacteria cells. And he concluded that the bacteria were causing the spoilage.
Pasteur had discovered bacteria, a previously unknown microscopic life form. It was the reason beer was turning bad. But the discovery had massive implications for all humanity. Because next, he asked himself a simple but brilliant question. If bacteria can make beer sick, could they do the same thing to people?
The answer is basically yes. And that is really the basis of germ theory.
Germ theory sounds dull, but it's the cornerstone of modern medicine. Because before it, nobody had a clue that germs even existed.
Before we had germ theory, people weren't sure what caused diseases. They thought it was caused by bad air coming off of the swamps or evil spirits.
Swamps, evil spirits, try finding a pill for those. But Pasteur's revelation changed everything. For the first time, we realized that bacteria and germs caused sickness. And once you know the cause, you can look for a cure. Vaccines, which virtually wiped out killer diseases like smallpox and polio. Plus, doctors started washing their hands.
Before the germ theory was understood, doctors, for example, might come straight from an autopsy to help a woman give birth. But after the discovery of this germ theory, just a simple recommendation, wash your hands before you help a woman give birth. The incidence of these infections went way down, saved millions of lives.
So now you know. Wash your hands next time you deliver a baby. And give thanks to beer.
That's absolutely awesome.
We gotta love beer. Beer, thanks for everything. Cheers. Cheers.
With disease ticked off the list, beer could now take on its next great challenge. Heat. In the 19th century, heat meant rotting meat and vegetables. Sickness, disease, uninhabitable climates, and some very grumpy people. All problems we solve today with something we take for granted. Refrigeration. And guess who came up with the goods?
The first commercially viable refrigeration systems were built by beer. Developed because of the brewing industry, financed by the brewing industry initially, and applied most often to the brewing industry.
It's all thanks to a new type of beer that took America by storm in the 19th century. Lager.
Lager beer changed America, and once it hit American shores, things were never the same again.
It arrived in the 1840s along with German immigrants like Frederick Miller and Adolf Coors. But unlike old-fashioned beers, lager beer had to be brewed cold.
Typically, lagers need cold because we need to be able to undertake the fermentation slowly. That way we can control the beer flavor.
150 years ago, the only option was ice, carved from nature and shipped to the brewery. Far from ideal.
Ice is very heavy, which meant it was expensive to transport and expensive to store, and of course, eventually it's going to melt.
When spring came, the beer dried up until the following winter. Every summer, brewers dreamed about creating cold artificially. In the 19th century, science fiction. But beer has an eye for the future.
Brewers were keenly interested in the work being done in artificial refrigeration.
Many thought them mad, but they poured money into research.
This was automatic cold, right? This is like mass-produced cold air. Certainly an improvement over ice.
Now, you wouldn't want this in your kitchen, but it's the world's first commercial fridge. The cold ammonia machine, invented by Carl von Linde in 1881 for beer. For brewers, refrigeration was the goose that laid the golden egg.
Once you have refrigeration, you can make this beer year-round.
It made the beer industry millions, gave us a constant stream of cold lager, and changed the world forever.
Refrigeration has solved one of the greatest problems afflicting mankind, the storage of food. The beer industry made it possible for us to do that for billions of people.
There goes beer, saving lives again. Refrigeration means air conditioning, the manufacture and storage of medicines, even the ability to keep organs alive for transplants. And most importantly, for this little girl, ice cream.
There's just so many different things that refrigeration does for us. We really would have a hard time existing without it nowadays. And just think of it, it's all due to beer.
The quest for the perfect drop produced some of the greatest discoveries and inventions of the modern age. Coming up, beer invents modern industry and gets ready to blast off into space. In the 21st century, we live in the age of mass production. Our standard of living is higher than ever before. All thanks to that great American icon, the factory.
The factory became the symbol of everything that was glorious about America. It exemplified the American ability to look off into a future of infinite possibility.
Most people think the factory was invented by Henry Ford and the motor car. But they're wrong. It wasn't the car that put America on the road to economic power. It was beer. Dr. Quentin Scravage is a professor of American industrial history.
Set it right here.
Beer production revolutionized American industry. It really automated the production line at least 10 years before Henry Ford.
This is the machine that changed the world. Invented by Michael Owens in 1904. And it didn't make cars. It made beer bottles.
When you look at the Mike Lowen's automated machine, there's no question you have to say that it all started with beer. The first product he made on the machine was a beer bottle.
A little-known fact with massive ramifications.
Owen's bottle-making machine was the most significant machine invention in the 19th century. There's no question about it.
In the first place, it spelled the end of child labor.
Because it automated the glass industry, which was the main abuser of child labor in the United States at the time. His machine virtually wiped out child labor in a matter of 6 to 10 years.
Not only that, it completely transformed the economic landscape forever.
Beer automated America.
10 years before the first car rolled off a production line in 1914, companies like Miller and Coors had blazed the trail of automation.
It changed the world, not only our country. It all started with beer.
Beer's forward march continues to this day. Americans now brew 6.2 billion gallons of beer every year and drink on average over 20 gallons of it each. Today, beer truly is the #1 adult beverage on the planet. Tomorrow, it could well be #1 in space.
I just think to myself, how cool would it be sitting up in a space bar, floating around in zero G, looking down at the Earth and having a beer. There'd be nothing better.
With space tourism coming, Australian brewer Jaron Mitchell wants his beer to be first into orbit. But space beer must be flat, because a burp in zero G would be seriously bad news.
Now, on Earth, the water molecules and the gas molecules separate, just due to gravity, etc. In space, they won't. So by burping in space, you'll have liquid and gas simultaneously coming up, a wet burp. You're in space and there was 50 people in a space bar in zero G floating around and everybody was wet burping. It'd be a mess. One hell of a party.
T-10, 9. The prototype space beer is uncarbonated, burp-proof, and ready for its first launch.
1, ignition.
And given beer's history, it's fitting that it should be with us at the final frontier. Throughout history, many have proclaimed the greatness of beer. Now we know just how great it truly is. So great that we could even use it as the official yardstick for human history.
Commonly, history is divided into two parts, BC and AD, and we think of it on the timeline. But we could also think of it as BB and AB, before beer and after beer. Before beer, wild nomads roaming around, hunting, gathering. After beer, people are settling in one spots, we're building towns, we're farming, we're developing towns, developing commerce, beer driving, the building of cities, and the establishment of science. Perhaps that's a better timeline for us to use.
For 10,000 years, beer has been the fuel in the engine of history. It's given us our greatest wonders and our most brilliant discoveries, not to mention one heck of a ride. Let's face it, beer hasn't just changed the world. It saved it. Cheers.